All right, well, I guess we're going to move on and talk a little bit about Far Cry New Dawn. Leigh, do you want to jump into that and let us know what your experience is in post apocalyptic Montana, as it were?
Hmm, sure. It's probably best to say it in context of other because it's come out and it's been despite the fact people knew it was coming, it's come out as quite a low key release, I think, in a weird
Yeah,
way.
I'd say that, yeah.
Um, so it's probably best to say the context of the series itself, and then other. I want to say maybe expansions like that and where you come from. So yeah, it's described as a kind of a sequel to New Dawn. Obviously, if you've seen the concept of it, you end up having a bit of a nuclear apocalypse at the end of five.
Yeah,
Andrew.
uh that was interesting. Um
Mm,
be, I think mostly because I don't think a lot of people saw that coming.
mm,
Um you the
no.
only I think the only way that it was projected to happen is if you listen to the in-game radio. They were like news broadcasts about some sort of thing going on in the world at large, um,
Mm,
and then all of a sudden at the end there's just nuclear bombs going off.
yeah. So New Dawn picks up about 10 years after that. And kind of everything has gone. I don't know much about nuclear winter, but apparently it only takes 10 years for everything to go into nice pink blossom.
Well, uh,
With
I don't want to. I'll just touch upon this real quick. Apparently,
mm,
that's a real thing that can happen.
well, okay.
There can be in the aftermath of a nuclear weapon, nuclear explosion, there can be the opposite of what a nuclear winter is, and that there can
Mm,
be this huge explosion of plant life in color and stuff like that.
mm.
I did it. I had the same thing too. I was like, why is it doing this? Why how can this happen in like 10 years after the nuclear war? But apparently, it's something that can happen, which is
Yeah.
strange.
So yeah, you're a government type. You don't really know much about yourself, and kind of you're thrown into this thing about 10 years later, and you end up coming up against the faction, kind of the big enemies, because obviously since three they have the cycle of these really flamboyant enemies that you only see at a few points during the game, but they make a big impact. They're quite good at writing their big bad villains like your
Mm-hmm.
Vass or
Yeah.
your oh pagan min.
Pagan men.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pagan min.
And of course the
The
Seed
father.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you will occasionally see is in the promotional stuff. It's fine. You occasionally the father has a presence in the game still, so you still have that. But most of the things your main protagonist antagonist in this is twins. These young twin girls
Yeah, it's
that
the
are kind of
Rye brother and sister, right?
um, they're sisters, the two sisters.
Oh,
So yeah,
those are antagonists, right?
yeah,
Okay.
antagonists. Yeah,
All right.
sorry. So yeah, and that's the kind of thing. And you go there, just kind of take them on like you do normal Far Cry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with the in the context of Far Cry compared to the others, it's an add-on expansion to some extent. Maybe not as small as maybe Blood Dragon, which I think was about a 3 or 4 hour experience.
Yeah, that was
At
a quick one.
probably about I would say a $10-15 mark, maybe was it when it came out?
Sure.
So yeah, and this one's come out and it's at the price point where in the UK, to put it this way, it's $60 in the US is £50 here,
No, it's not. It's
over
$40 here.
roughly. Oh yeah, but no, I mean as a full price game. Now we're selling it
Oh,
here
okay.
for £40, which would
Mm-hmm.
be $50. But I understand you're only paying $40 here
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah.
So we're
Ours.
getting a
Yeah.
worse deal here than you are there. So it's essentially
Yeah.
kind of a little bit off of a full price game.
Right.
And the game, I would say, is probably about a third of the length of 5.
Okay.
It's probably a good 10, 11-hour campaign.
5 can be a very
Um,
long game. There's a lot to do in that
mm,
game if you want to do all
yeah,
of it.
it's the same area, but it's still new. Oh, I can't remember what the place was called now.
Yeah, they used Hope County. They use the same
Hope
map.
County.
Yeah, they use
Yeah.
the same map,
And you,
and they've been honest with that, which they weren't
mm,
honest with Far Cry Primal, which apparently used the same map as Far Cry
mm,
4. But
yeah,
Primal was a full length game though. That
yeah,
was like there was a lot to Primal. And
yeah.
this seems more like a what does it feel like it should have been like an extended DLC, or does it feel like it belongs um in its own
No,
package?
this is a tricky thing because the map is generally the same size
Mm-hmm.
as kind of. There's not much that isn't in 5 that you get. So if you want to explore and you want to hunt, you
Mm-hmm.
could hunt for kind of 50 hours if you want to. But
Yeah,
obviously, as it's a
so
greatly diminished place, because everything dropped off, the settlements are far less.
okay.
So you're doing less within them, but you still
Okay.
have that expanse to travel.
All right.
Um,
So yeah, because I imagining that huge map, and then it's just less. It's just more sparse
mm,
with civilization anyway. Is there anything to do in that extra space other than hunt?
you can still hunt. You still come across the odd skirmish and people wandering around out there. You still have that sort of thing.
Okay.
Um, uh, there's probably more roaming about than anything.
Yeah.
I'll get into this a little bit later because obviously you have these camps and settlements, which ties into your progression in a rather strange way. So
Okay.
yeah, going back to the content of it, it's kind of so it's this a third of a
Far Cry game. Yep.
yeah Far Cry game, and you don't do the things that you used to. You still have the same loop of talking to the people to send you out, but it's all condensed into one area. You have a hub,
Okay.
and it's got everything in your hub, and you keep going back to your hub to keep getting sent back out again. So you've got this like little kind of community thing
Okay.
in the middle of it, and it'll keep sending you out. So you keep traveling forward and back. So the loop isn't as widespread. So you're not traveling out to meet these new people. You're kind of always going back, or you're going out on a mission to pick a new person to take back with you to the
Okay.
to your main base.
All right.
So
So
essentially, it's all just loops.
are you like building out that base in any meaningful way?
You can expand it with the main currency for expanding stuff is ethanol,
Yeah.
which is kind of stuff you pick up from. This is the thing where we can start getting into the strange ways the game is built. Um, I'll talk about how it's built. So it's generally, if you want to talk about the core of it, which is the combat type thing, it's still going to be Far Cry. It's still going to
Mm-hmm.
have that quite meaty combat type thing. That pretty good hunting system.
Okay.
But it has a strange way of you kind of getting your resources and stuff. So you'll catch camps like you used to, and then you'll get ethanol from that camp capture. And obviously, when you play that in the original Far Cry 5,
Yep.
your people will take that camp over,
Yeah.
and it will become a hot point, not a hot point, a save
Yeah,
point.
like a safe house, safe
Yeah.
location.
Um,
So this in here you can choose to take them over or not, and then retake them
mm,
over again, right?
yeah. Yeah. This is exactly it. So yeah,
Okay.
you can forego your save point and your store, and then the more you go back, the harder the battle is to regain it again.
Yeah.
The more the resource you get, but it's generally there's not that many of those bases,
Okay.
so the loop is gets slightly wearing after a while. But this is one of the only ways you can get a decent amount of ethanol to upgrade everything.
Okay.
So
And the
It's a
ethanol is
greatly
used to
reduced
upgrade your home base, but is it used to
base.
upgrade anything else?
I believe you could use it to do weapons and stuff.
Okay,
Vehicles and stuff like
vehicles.
that.
Okay,
There's a lot more emphasis on loot in this one. Um,
okay.
Gears, things and stuff like that to boost up your stuff. Um,
Loot as in stuff that you can use, or loot as in like
ooh,
materials that you
gears,
can use to craft.
suspension, just craft. There's a lot of craft back at the base. There's not so much on the fly crafted. The resource gathering is generally the same method, but for a lot of different things. Hunting skins are worth just money now. You
Okay,
can't use them to craft any new stuff. That's
okay,
been kind of very simplified. I think that's the whole thing about it is it's been very simplified, but not maybe in a way that feels satisfying to the game. In a way
okay,
that it's kind of condensed it, so you're still getting the essence of Far Cry, but kind of just a lesser. We'll cram it into the 10 hours because you've not got 25, 30 to kind of build
okay.
that thing.
Um,
So the
so when you say you're getting money, you're not crafting things with that. So how are the so you're crafting weapons and upgrades and stuff, right?
yeah,
How,
upgrades. There's no modifications on your weapons anymore. They've removed that as well. That's
okay,
just now down to 3 upgrades per gun.
okay. How are the
And you'll
guns?
spend
How are they? Because
it,
one of my problems with with Far Cry 5 was there's a
mm,
very limited number of guns, and I kind of used the same guns throughout the entire game.
they are absolutely exactly the same guns, but with a pink skin on them.
Oh, okay.
Um, exactly. Apart from one weapon called a saw launcher,
Yeah, I've seen
which is
that.
this kind of projectile ricochet thing, which you can upgrade to stick.
Yeah.
I'll talk about this when we start talking into the things I have problems with the game. So they don't ricochet, so they just stick into your people, so it doesn't cause havoc. And you can have
Hmm.
more than one after a while. The saw launcher is fine. It's fun. It is fun, but it's very frustrating when it starts bumping against what feels like the more rushed nature of this. I'm not quite sure why this exists, to be honest with you.
Oh,
This game
probably
as
to
a
make
whole.
money.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, when you look at other similar things to this, I would not put this as a Blood Dragon, which is a very
Yeah.
fun quickie.
Hmm.
I would say this is more along the lines of Wolfenstein: The Old Blood, or
Okay.
what was the Dishonored? Death of the Outsider. It's
Okay.
quite a substantial expanded DLC, not
Hmm.
enough to make it a full kind of mini game,
Yep.
but kind of it's still got a decent amount of content that you wouldn't get from just a downloadable title. It's generally Far Cry, but it seems a lot more kind of surprisingly lazily slapped together. Um, Stuff like the general graphics, the environments look lush. They really look great. The cutscenes look really great and stuff like that. The kind of the big polished stuff is fine. When you
Hmm.
start digging into kind of stuff like NPC stuff, it looks like something from the Xbox 360. It's very kind of a game of two halves. There's corners cut.
So what do you mean by
There's
that?
It just seems like they haven't spent much time on stuff like um kind of movable assets, maybe stuff like characters and stuff like
Like
that, and move around,
animation?
kind of just stare at you. Yeah, and it's more kind of stock hands moving, like a kind of marionette type thing than it was
Okay.
previously, which really jars when you see the cutscenes because the cutscenes look as good as anything in five.
Okay.
So you do notice it when it comes crashing into your gameplay.
Hmm.
Um, uh, then when you get into gameplay, it seems like they kind of rushed the stuff like AI and stuff doesn't seem very good. The enemies will literally just stand there sometimes. Either they'll all bum rush you, or they will stand there with their back to you and just let you pile into them. Your part because you've still got the partner AI thing where they follow you and they come out with you.
Yeah,
They
the
have a terrible
companions,
habit
right?
of running straight into your line of fire every single time you get into a skirmish, and you have to revive them. And when that comes into a real problem is when you play with the new addition, the saw launcher, because you'll fire one. Either your partner will run straight into the saw blade, and they go down instantly, or
Mm,
it'll ricochet eventually into her, so she's also taken out. They haven't really thought about that sort of thing.
okay.
When you've got a ricochet weapon and you've got a partner AI that's going to get clipped and go down with one hit, it really kind of brings your skirmish, especially when you walk into a base you're not expecting everybody to descend upon you. It's really going to grind it to an absolute halt. It's like I've just got into this and everybody's kicking off at me, and now I've got to revive someone because she ran straight into my saw blade.
Right.
And stuff like that. That sort of stuff doesn't seem very refined. Um, the It's a case of kind of I don't know. It just seems incredibly rushed, but also had a lot of money spent on it, so not much effect on it. It doesn't seem
Okay.
like a cheap game. It just seems like resources and not enough time.
All
A
right.
lot of resources and not enough time. I'm
Well,
not sure. Did Far Cry 5 sell very well, or did it
yeah,
sell to expectations?
it was quietly one of the most successful games of last year.
Wow,
Yeah.
because I've assumed that might be why, because they've tried to. And also, another thing I find quite egregious is there's a Far Cry coin system which goes into it, which helps you buy extra weapons, kind of more powerful weapons and stuff like that. More powerful weapons are the same weapons you have
Mm-hmm.
anyway, kind of, in a microtransaction system. And
Yeah.
you will never get enough of the game of the coins in the world
Yeah.
in
So
the
so
New Hope.
Ubisoft games have had this kind of layer of microtransactions on them for a while
Mm,
now.
yeah.
What's the difference between this one and the way they've appeared in the other games?
That you're probably not going to feel the benefit of buying these things when the game's only 10 hours. Um,
Okay.
if
So
it was
then,
something you could pile into later when you want to you need the tough shit, but by the time you've generally upgraded your gun 3 times, so you don't need anything more powerful than that. So it
okay.
does feel a little bit kind of very egregious.
So how can it be egregious but also not necessary to engage with?
Um, um, I say not necessary to. If you want some more variety in your weapon, yeah, I suppose yeah, you're right. Yeah, I guess. But kind of that's where the rest of the weapons are that you don't tend to pick up in the world that were in the previous games.
Okay.
So yeah, so if you really want to beef up your your artillery, then that's where you're going to find the best of the weapons.
Okay.
I'm not sure there's enough content to warrant you getting those things, but if you want to get the best experience out of the game you already know you like,
Okay.
which is kind of play it with the best weapons you can, you're probably going to have to pay for
All right.
it. It's not the most
So
outrageous. It's not like $100 for a horse skin or anything like that. So it's not awful, but it just seems a bit cheeky for a very
okay.
slimline version of the game.
Yeah, I know there were some people that complained about some of the microtransactions in Odyssey, um,
Mm.
making it easier to level or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it feels like Ubisoft they've had these microtransactions in their games for some time, and they just keep kind of like pushing the boundary a little bit to see how far they can get before it becomes too much. And I feel like this year as not necessarily calendar year, but this year in the past like 12 months with Assassin's Creed Odyssey and now this, they've maybe found where like the extent that they can push it before the audience starts pushing back. Um,
Yeah. Are we classing Odyssey and stuff like that as games as service? Or we
no,
not got that far yet? We haven't got that far yet. Okay.
no, I
Because
don't
this
think.
is the furthest from games as service as you can get. and they're still putting the same sort of monetized things in. But no, if you say Odyssey isn't like that, then it's not really a fair criticism, I guess.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't consider Odyssey a games as a service. That you can buy
Mm,
a season pass and they're putting out content for it, but there's no like
mm,
consistent updates and consistent content like on a weekly basis or anything like that.
mm.
Um, they're just doing their normal post launch support
Mm,
for it.
yeah. So there, yeah. So well, there's the gameplay side. Another thing I have a problem with is, again, this is down to production value versus time, I guess. The voice acting is incredibly good. The you get the father back in a certain context, and he's as good as he was in the previous one, as creepy as fuck.
Hmm.
That's great. The two girls are very, very, very well acted. Fortunately, the story is terrible, and the dialogue is awful. There's no
Hmm.
memorable. It's like everything. The script feels incredibly rushed, but they've got incredibly good people in to perform it. So not even the
That
story is a satisfying
that seems
push.
like what the problem was with, in my opinion anyway, Far Cry 5 is that they
Mm,
had like a lot of production value, they had a lot of great motion capture, they had a lot of those
mm,
moments where the character was looking you dead in the eye and delivering their monologue, but what they were
yeah.
saying was garbage. Like they weren't
Mm,
saying anything that was worth hearing or worth having this kind of levity. Um, and
mm,
Yeah, and that's disappointing because the series previously had some impact in that department, um, and especially last time with the kind of the setting that they were going with the cult and the militia and stuff like that. You kind of thought that they were gonna take a little bit more, a few more risks with the story, but they kind of
mm.
really didn't. It kind of really all just kind of fell apart and was a little flat in that respect.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, so yeah, and the kind of so
So
that's kind of thing is. Oh, sorry.
so so,
Go
so
ahead.
maybe you come to Far Cry for just a kind of crazy open world checklist shooter. Don't care about the story and all of that stuff. Is there something there, or is this kind of a dud in that respect too?
It's not a dud. It isn't a dud. If you just want to go out there and put around, you'll have kind of stuff like when you would get attacked by animals like the honey badger type things that just come and fuck you up for no reason whatsoever. You still
Yeah.
get all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
All right.
What I don't remember quite so much is people burning you to death with Molotovs when they try to attack them with a weapon that's going to take you out and stuff like that. Again, it's that sort of thing where they have not quite thought it through, I don't think. And then you're
Okay.
trapped there. I'm being attacked by a bear and everything's on fire. Somebody please send help.
Yeah. It
Oh,
really.
wait, my help's just set me on fire.
Yeah. Far Cry 5, more than any of the other Far Cries, felt like a game that was really held together by thread.
Mm,
Like all the
yeah.
systems, all of the crazy stuff that could go down at any moment. It was just this insane mishmash of all of this stuff, and sometimes it worked, but most of the time, what you ended up with was just this gigantic cluster of just never-ending. You take out a jeep full of enemies, and then there's another jeep right behind them because it's on a timer, because they
Mm,
can't let you breathe for 2 seconds,
mm,
and then some animal comes out of the woods and starts attacking everybody, and then all of a sudden there's an airplane overhead and they're taking shots at you too.
Yep.
And that happened way too frequently. It was way too
mm,
frustrating for me in that game. It's one of the reasons why I stopped playing it. I ended up picking it up later and finishing it up, but initially that was a little bit disappointing that
mm,
they weren't able to balance out some of that stuff, because some of that stuff could be cool in
mm,
like limited doses and having it feel a little bit more natural, But
Yeah, and less structured, because once you kind of learned where everything was, everything came through at you in some sort of structure you could recognize.
yeah, like I said,
Mm.
it was just like you could tell that that Jeep that was on a timer, and no matter where you were and what you were doing, it was always going to come up with the intention to screw up whatever it was you were doing at that moment. And
Mm.
it was just frustrating because it was such a naked system that you could see like almost all the gears working behind the scenes, um, mostly because it just fell apart so often.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's crazy because I
Yeah.
found here too when you were talking about how well it sold, like kind of as a sleeper thing.
Hmm.
It it was their fastest selling title in the franchise, and it was the second biggest launch ever, only being beat out by when the Division launched.
Well, their second
Mm.
biggest launch of all time.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow.
The first one was the Division.
Yeah.
Mm. That makes it even less baffling because I just don't know where it came from. I don't know why it's
Yeah,
still kind
it
of
did kind of pop out of nowhere and felt like it was like really, really fast.
Yeah. I wonder if it was
it's
just gonna
less than a
be
year.
expanded
Less.
DLC, and it
Mm.
just got a little bit too big, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
they decided to make it its own thing, and
Mm.
um, in in one way, I'm kind of glad they didn't spin it up into a full giant like Far Cry 6 release,
Mm.
because I think they really need to go back to this series and kind of um, reboot it in a way, kind of like they did with Assassin's Creed.
Mm.
Take a couple years off and like think about what Far Cry is and what it can be, because we've kind of had the same game since Far Cry 3. It's
Mm.
it's essentially been the same formula, with small tweaks here and there, but by and large, it's been pretty much the same. Um,
Mm.
and it's been too long. There's been too many games. There's been too many. The formula is wearing thin. Um,
Mm.
it's fine to have a kind of crazy, silly, wacky time here and there, but
Mm.
as as if you're coming to it for anything more than that, then you're probably gonna have a bad time, um,
Mm.
because the story is gonna fall flat. The characters just aren't as interesting anymore. Like they can't do another game where there's this big reveal about these charismatic, kind of crazy villains or something like that, because even that's
Mm.
wearing out.
Yeah.
You say the sisters are good, but I watched like the opening to that game, and
Mm.
the stuff that they were saying was not good.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
it
What I
was
mean, yeah,
terrible writing, and
that's what I mean. The actual performance is good. The actual
right,
acting of it is good. The rendering of them in the scenes is good. Writing is terrible. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But writing is what really lets it down.
the dialogue, the things that they were saying were just so bad.
Yeah, it
It's
just
like
strips the charisma away from them.
yeah, it was like cringy is what it was. It was just like,
Yeah.
they're really saying that? That's the dumbest thing. I don't
Mm.
know. Whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not a one-off. It is not a one-off.
yeah, that's
Absolutely
throughout.
not.
Yeah. All right. Well, that
Yeah.
was the
So,
one I ended up skipping on the
mm,
Black Friday in February, as it were.
yeah.
Um, which was
Um,
a bunch of stuff came out.
yeah. I would suggest that kind of for the price point, especially if you wear it from work, which is kind of £10 cheaper than a AAA thing. I will wait till it's a good $20, I guess, 15, 20, and then have a look because you're still going to get that core thing. But for the price point they're selling it at, it's absolutely. They should have done it at the same sort of price point as Bethesda did with their spin-offs,
Hmm.
which was I think probably about a $20 mark, maybe $15, $20 mark when they released those. They were quite cheap, weren't they?
I don't know.
I believe. Yeah, definitely outside. I think they were relatively. I think here they were classed as like £15, which would probably be about 25 there, I guess.
Yeah, about 20, 25.
So wait, absolutely wait for the price they're charging. That it's absolutely not worth it, and it does feel like they're kind of winding down for a while.
Okay.
It feels like that's as far as it, unless they're going to try and do something like a Primal. It feels like they're not done with it, but it feels like we're slowing. We've gone as far as we can with this kind of